G'day you beautiful people, welcome back. Today we're going to have another look at a rework idea, this time for Countess. Before we get into that though, like normal, just like to say that I don't just come up with this stuff all on my own. Sometimes I look at other community members' suggestions and I may very well go with their ideas and give them credit for it. Or I might even feel the need to disagree with that and voice my opinions on why I disagree with it. As far as my videos do go though, my intention is to be as inventive and out there as possible, but in some instances obviously I keep, the majority of their kit intact because it does actually suit them. Every hero I do gets a passive, and I'm also giving them quests. I'm going to be giving a quest to their passive and their 3 basic abilities, but not for their ultimate. The way in which I generally do the numbers for these quests is based upon every single hero being able to go into a match and always have their passive quest, and picking one of the other 3 quests for their abilities. So I kind of try to balance them out so that you're throwing up which one to go for. But I'm totally for a hero having all 4 quests every match, or perhaps just randomly having 1 quest per character, like Sparrow having a quest on her passive, or someone else like Richter having a quest on his Whiplash. So keep that in mind. With that said though, let's get started. So Countess, she's a bit of a bugger. She can be pretty annoying. I know I've had plenty of matches when I have screamed obscenities at Countess. But be that as it may, I do agree that she needs to be able to do a lot of damage. Her whole basic design is that she deletes people, and then, that's pretty much it for her. She gets off a rotation of all of her abilities, has bugger all mana left, and needs to get the hell out of dodge in most occasions. Obviously, she can get a lot of her health back, but she's sort of the anti-carry assassin. She's supposed to go in and just delete a squishy and get out of there. I kind of like to think of her as a burst damage assassin, and I'd like for her to kind of be an anti-healing burst damage assassin, which is a bit of a mouthful. But if we go ahead and look at her kit, so I have kind of implemented that a little bit, and you'll see that in a moment. So just looking at her basic attack, which is called Slice, 10% cleave on it, and I am suggesting that assassins probably have a power scaling on their basic attack of about 0.4, which is a little bit higher than a support. Probably around about the same as what a caster would get generally, because she is she's an assassin, but she's a caster. She's a bit of a weird one. Moving on to a passive, which I'm naming Vampirism, which is kind of a positive negative passive. When Countess kills an enemy, she regens health equal to 2% of minions' max health and 15% of heroes' max health, meaning that if she kills a minion, she gets 2% of their max health back. If she kills an enemy hero, she gets 15% of the enemy hero's max health back. And being a vampire, Countess receives less max health from items and takes 100% more damage from burn. The health thing is probably not going to play into it too much. I kind of added that in just because I was thinking back to playing Countess on Monolith prior to version 32, and I don't actually remember what the card was called. It was a death card that a lot of people used to run as 6-point cards, slotting minor healths into it. You would get damage and health off of this card. At the end of fully slotting out the card, you would get some damage off to make it a little bit tankier while also boosting her damage. So it's not really going to play into it. Obviously, you're going to you're going to prioritize your itemization around taking ability damage. But I think the 100% more damage from burn is like a really important part of it. Yeah, she's going to take more damage from Iggy and from Seraph, which kind of just makes sense. She's a vampire, you burn vampires, so I went with it. It's a hard counter to a very strong hero. Not always strong, but she could come up against a team comp that just absolutely shits on her. But if there's a couple of squishies on the enemy team, she can be quite formidable if she's fed kills. So taking a look at the quest for Vampirism. After securing or assisting in 10 enemy hero kills, health regen is increased to 5% and 25% respectively. So 5% of an enemy minion's health, or just a minion's health when she kills it, and 25% of the enemy hero that she has killed. So, if the enemy hero has 1,000 health prior to completing the passive, you'll get 150 health back after killing them, and after completing the quest, you'll get 250 health back. Pretty easy to understand, I think. Okay, so moving on, we have Shadow Slip, which is her blink ability. So Countess targets a nearby enemy and blinks to it, dealing ability damage and applying a 30% movement speed slow for 1.5 seconds. If the target is a lane minion, it is executed. You have to emphasize that that's a lane minion. She cannot execute jungle minions. And re-trigger the ability within 3 seconds to return to the original position. So it's exactly the same way that it worked before, except for the movement speed slow has been changed from going... I think the last way that it was set up was level 1, it was 42%, and level 4 it was 51%. So I've knocked it down to a flat 30% as its base. And then the quest would read, after executing 30 enemy minions via Shadow Slip, movement speed debuff is increased to 50%. So the movement speed debuff on Shadow Slip will go back to what it was at 50% if you choose to do so. Next up we have Dark Tide, big, huge damaging ability for Countess, and it reads as, if I can find it, Countess sends out a roiling cloud of darkness in front of her, dealing ability damage to all enemies in the area of effect and applying Blight. So I decided to obviously add Blight onto Dark Tide, which is, if you remember, reduces healing. It used to at one point be 60%, I think, or maybe 70%. And then I think towards the end of Blight's existence, it went down to 40%. I really think it should be back in the game, and I think it should be at about 60 to 70%. So you hit enemies with this, does a lot of damage, and it applies Blight for 3 seconds. The quest would read, after last hitting 100 minions with Dark Tide, Blight duration is increased to 5 seconds. So you have a very high damage ability that reduces healing of the enemy team. Next up we have Bladesiphon. So Countess quickly spins, causing ability damage in a circle around her. I have gone to change it though, so killing an enemy with Bladesiphon, it increases your damage by 0.2% and it stacks 50 times. So upon getting the 50 stacks, you'll have an extra 10% ability damage. That will apply to all of your abilities, and all stacks are lost upon death. Then you have the quest that reads, after last hitting 100 enemies with Bladesiphon, stack limit is increased to 75. I'm not 100% certain on whether it should be last hitting them with Bladesiphon, because part of me is like, that's gonna take a long time. I tend to try to do these sort of quests so that they're achievable, for most of them being achievable between like around about the 10-minute mark, but the really strong ones, sort of taking 15 minutes plus. I'm just not sure how feasible this is, so I'm not sure whether it should just be after last hitting 100 minions. And just keep in mind that this does not sort of compete with the Dark Tide quest, because you can't have them both at the same time. So then your stack limit would have been increased to 75, which means you get 15% increase to ability damage across the board. And finally we have Feast, which works the same. The only thing I might suggest is that perhaps she might receive 20% more healing or something if she secures kills with Feast. Who knows? But pretty much the same thing that you used to. She sort of jumps onto the target, locking them and herself down for the duration of the ability, dealing a buttload of damage and hopefully securing kills. So then you end up with my idea for Countess. She is an anti-healing burst damage assassin. She has that blight on her Dark Tide. She can increase her own damage via Bladesiphon. And she gets health back on securing kills, but she also has the negative of less max health from items and taking 100% more damage from burn. So she will be incredibly strong, but she has hard counters in the form of, like we discussed, Seraph and Iggy, which hopefully, hopefully there's no mirror matching in competitive mode. So, and it's a proper draft where you get to see sort of what gets picked bit by bit, rather than the entire team just locking in at once. I would like to see a scenario where it's Team 1 locks in one character, Team 2 locks in 2 characters, Team 3 locks in 2 characters, so on and so forth. So if you see a Countess on the enemy team, you can counter it with a Seraph or an Iggy. Maybe not Iggy, because we haven't really got into my Iggy rework, but I'm not creating him as something that you would want to be chasing down a Countess with. So that's my idea for Countess. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Smash the like button if you enjoyed the video. Subscribe if you're not already. With that said, thank you so much for watching. I love your face, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.